Welcome. This is John Diaz, the editorial page editor for the San Francisco Chronicle, welcoming Ron Paul, a congressman from Texas, Republican presidential candidate. Appreciate you coming to see us.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Congressman, we run these things fairly informally. If you want to give any kind of short opening comment about yourself and your candidacy, and then we'll go with questions.
Okay, I can very briefly do that. I am by profession an MD, OBGYN. I practiced medicine for over 30 years, off and on, and delivered over 4,000 babies, but became fascinated with economics in the 1970s and offered myself in a congressional race, which I was surprised to win. And I went into Congress and served 4 terms and then went back to my medical practice and went into politics again in 1997, was reelected to Congress. So I've been fascinated with economic policy, and in more recent years have become more fascinated and interested in our overall foreign policy, of course, dealing with our foreign entanglements. So those are the issues that have generally driven me. I'm also driven by the fact that the rule of law is very important to me, that if we have problems, that we have to sort them out in a precise manner, that my obligation as a elected official is to obey the Constitution, and if we have to change it, we should change it in a precise manner. And I'm convinced that a society that operates by following the rule of law as well as respect for our Constitution, that we'd all be better off. Our personal liberties would be protected, our market would be protected, and I think we would have a more sensible foreign policy.
Let me ask you, if I could, a little bit about your campaign. Initially, as you mentioned, some of your positions don't neatly fit into Republican, Democrat parameters as they are cast right now in this country. But also your campaign's fairly unorthodox. It's very grassroots. You have a YouTube site. Tell me about how you plan to go about running.
Well, some of it's been spontaneous, if not most of it, is that I entered into the race and offered up a philosophy which I considered very conservative and very pro-American and very constitutional. And it's had a lot of appeal, and it has spontaneously stimulated a lot of people to join the campaign through the use of the Internet. So the fundraising and the volunteers are all coming spontaneously. And we are very pleased with that, but we've been able to make progress in a very conservative manner. I think we're doing quite well, but we're not needing to spend most of our money so far. So a lot of people say that I'm practicing what I preach. And so we're very pleased with what's happening. And obviously the Internet has helped us tremendously.
I see. Do you think, obviously in 2007 for the 2008 election, it seems like at least the conventional wisdom has gone the other way, especially with the primaries being front-loaded as they are. California is now much earlier in the game. The perception is more than ever you need to raise a lot of money early on. How do you think you're going to defy the odds? Or is your campaign really about winning, or is it making a statement, elevating some of the issues that you care about?
Well, it has to be about winning, or you're not a real candidate and you're a fake candidate. But you also have to be realistic, and you don't want to pretend that you're on the verge of total victory when you know you're really not. But if you look at history, it doesn't rule out us doing much, much better than we're doing now and actually win. Because if you look at where Clinton and Carter and others were at this time, they were not doing that well in the polls, and not a lot of people knew them. And you're absolutely right. The process has been designed to exclude individuals like myself, not only because they're bunching them together and letting the special interest money rule the electoral process. It also means that it's undermining the chances of an independent-minded person the opportunity to get a foothold in the early primaries. So we have one thing going very well for us, and that is the spreading of our message more rapidly and more cheaply than ever before. At the same time, we're facing up against great odds of those individuals that can raise $50 to $100 million from special interests, and we don't get that money. Our average donation is under $100.
Congressman, this is Deborah Saunders. I have to give my name for the podcast. The USA Today poll found you at 0%. What do you think that means? And if you end up staying that low in the polls, do you think you should have a place in the debates through the election, through the primary?
Well, absolutely. We preach democracy, and people should have advantages. The fact I've been in the debates has gotten a great deal of attention for me.
Then why haven't you gotten over
Well,
5% on
maybe the
USA
polls
Today?
aren't as accurate as one would think. Sometimes my name isn't even mentioned in the polls. And you can't have a presence like we already have in raising a lot of money and being financially in better shape than the so-called chosen few. I mean, McCain now is in big trouble. So I have more money in the bank. So why isn't that a credible answer to making progress? So, but also, a lot of our supporters don't even have land phones. Most of them are young people. That's the group that we've really energized, and nobody calls them on their cell phone. So, yes, we have to prove ourselves, but the time will come. Straw votes are coming. The many straw votes that we've had, we've done quite well. And anytime we have a poll after a debate, we do very well. So the message is powerful. The interest is growing. We're raising money. And to say that, well, you don't rate high, you don't deserve to be, that's so undemocratic. I mean, here we are, people are dying pretending that we're spreading democracy around the world, and they want to deny democracy for us here at home. It to me, doesn't make any sense. Because there's been a concerted effort to do exactly what she suggests, to exclude me. Immediately afterwards, they didn't want to hear my message. You can't be a conservative and talk like that. Well, why can't I? I can defend it from a conservative constitutional viewpoint. So we want to keep you out. And the harder they have tried to keep me out, like in Iowa just recently, they excluded me from a candidates forum. Well, they had 600 people show up, and we had over 1,100. So that tells us that that we can overcome those obstacles, but we still have to prove ourselves.
When you talk about young people being drawn to your campaign, obviously your opposition to the war is something that distinguishes you not only from Republican candidates, but also, as you well know, a lot of the candidates in the Democratic field are getting beat up for their original support for the war resolution, which you voted against.
Right.
Is that the issue that you think is going to define you, and how does that get you through a Republican primary, considering President Bush has pretty much laid out his resistance to changing course?
It's a real challenge, but if you look at what's happening, it's all moving in my direction. I talked to so many members of Congress who are ready to bail out. They didn't do it yesterday, but they're ready to bail out in September. No progress. We're deserting the president. That's what's coming. And the Republican base, the hardcore political partisans want to win. And they're starting to realize they know they lost in the fall because of the war. And if they know they can't win without changing foreign policy, they will. So this is an issue that really strikes at the heart of young people, plus a lot of other people. But the challenge is can I remind enough Republicans about the old right position and energize them and make them feel comfortable that they can still be a conservative and not be warmongers? And quite frankly, that is a position that Republicans used to hold.
You didn't vote yesterday on the House resolution.
That's right.
Why not?
Well, mainly because I had made a commitment about 6 weeks ago, and I had a plane to catch, and it's one of the sad parts of campaigning is a lot of people miss all their votes when they're campaigning. I miss a few, but I was very explicit on where I stood. I put a speech into the record, and everybody knows exactly what my position was. And this is one of the shortcomings of being in politics, and I probably am doing as well as any other candidate that's in office, making my votes. But it doesn't make me feel real comfortable about it, but it's one of those things that you do end up compromising on during your time.
Congressman Paul, I'm Lois Kazikoff, the Deputy Editorial Page Editor. So you obviously identified the war as being the top issue, but what are the other issues that people are drawn to you by? What is your polling showing at this point?
Well, since we have so many young people coming in, and I have them just stopping by the dozens, in my office, which I didn't have before, I always ask them that question. And I've been shocked and pleased they talk about the Constitution. And that to me is so impressive because we write off the kids and we write off public education and we say they don't care, they don't vote, they have no interest. And they say, I like your stand on the Constitution, they like my stand on the war, and they like my stand on privacy and personal issues. You know, like I'm the one that has had by far the best voting record to protect the privacy of the internet.